The Solar quest is already 3 years old at the making of this video, and nowadays a lot of people seem to think the quest is easy, and it's not. In fact, at least in my opinion, it's still the hardest quest in the game, and this video will break down why, starting by talking about why you might think it's easy, and it often goes down to quest services. It's not a secret for anyone, they are heavily advertised everywhere, and unlike a POI service where they clear the quest for you, in this one they will ask for your character info and play it themselves with groups made by them. I'm not going to discuss whether that is a good or bad thing, that's not the main point of this video. And I do think, unfortunately, that without these services, a lot of characters wouldn't have done the quest. I personally did them back in the day, so my opinion might be biased. Regardless, these services often will set a level requirement as low as level 250, which is the bare minimum for the quest requirements. Because of that, you might get misled into thinking the quest is easy, but it's very likely that when they take a level 250 through the quest, there will be a few high levels to balance it out, basically doing the quest as a high 4-man with the 250 just focusing on surviving. Another thing to keep in mind, sadly, is that a lot of people doing these services are using third-party software to make it easier on themselves. These programs will often keep the stone skin amulets and my rings on the entire time, and that does reduce the risk by a lot. But I'm not saying that all of them are doing that. In fact, I doubt that's the case nowadays, because it actually became a big issue a few years ago with people getting their characters deleted, and I feel like people offering a service needs to build trust first by doing a bunch of quests with no issues to ensure getting higher. But obviously, I do not advertise nor recommend anyone in particular. In fact, this video's purpose is the opposite of that. I want more players to try this quest. I think it's one of the best content in the game, and it's a shame that it's not being done as intended. This quest does get easier the more you do it, since the nerfs go down over time, and the practice itself helps a lot when doing the quest, as well as learning the mechanics during the actual fights, which is why people are able to do them with lower level averages. I have seen less than level 500 average do the quest, and that is impressive. I personally would recommend that if your team is doing it for the first time, at least be an average team of level 700s. Even if it can be done with lower levels, it's better to have some breathing room. I just finished the quest on my new server by Terra, with the 5 of us being on the level 500 range, and 2 of our team were doing it for the first time, and it was not a clean run. In total, we had 9 deaths, which, to be fair, it is one of the main reasons people don't try the quest themselves. Dying on this game is very punishing, we all know that, but at the same time, taking risks and doing hard content can be rewarding. In fact, one of the persons that did the quest for the first time with us had already done it with a service, but he agreed to help us since we needed another DD, and he actually was very interested in taking the challenge of doing the content himself. Throughout the quest, he will often mention how nervous he was, even at some points feeling sick from the stress, and I could relate to that. The first time I did the quest, I was just as nervous. It was the hardest content I had done in the game even to this point, but at the end, when it was finally over, he thanked us for taking him in. He was proud and super happy for doing it, and I think he became a better player just by having done it. Trust me, I don't think the majority of people did the quest themselves. So let's change that. Even if your characters have gotten the quest reward, but you personally never did it for whatever reason, and if you already have a team to hunt with, try looking for a fifth and set it up. I have made full guides for the entire quest, and in the coming days I will be uploading the raw footage with our Discord comms of the boss fights we just went through in Terra. Hopefully those will be helpful to some of you, as my guides were before the introduction of the Wheel of Destiny, and that has definitely made them a little bit easier. But even with that, the quest will be hard. Some of the reasons will be from the nerfs. That's unavoidable, it will happen. Even when I was farming the quest with my level 1k, I will get nervous at some bosses like the final, because the risk of failure is very high, not just from deaths, but also for time invested. Failing a regular boss means you can do it the next day if you want to, but for example, the ebb and flow boss access can take close to 2 hours in some deaths, so having to repeat that, it's very painful, and in the case of failing the final, you might end up having to wait 2 weeks to try again, depending on which bosses get resetted. Another thing that will be difficult is adapting to a different playstyle. Having to equip stone skins non-stop is not something that you get used to from regular play. It is very unique to this quest and perhaps PvP fights, but usually on PvP you will be tanking damage when trapped. In this quest you have to do that and also continue to attack and move around while doing mechanics if you have to. So it's common to have to move around your hotkeys differently in order to do better at the quest, but that's different for every player. Lastly, yet another obstacle is the time requirement. For first timers and depending on the levels, the quest can take over 7 hours, but it can just as easily be split in parts. you don't need to do it in one sitting, unless you're hunting one of the soulware spawns. In that case, I don't recommend to do the quest, because it will interfere with your hunts, and also if you fail or get stuck at some point, then you will be left with things that make it much harder to continue to hunt in soulware. And that's all I can tell you on this video. Consider subscribing to the channel if you found it helpful. Thanks to Tuna Hero, Nightstar and Torta Slasher for their support, and thank you for watching this video, and see you next time.